Hey everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Co-Creating with AI. I'm Martin. With me is Rasmus, as always, and today we also have a guest. Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm one of two co-founders of a consultancy called Samsen. So we help tech companies mostly with product design and design systems. Our clients range from small startups all the way up to unicorns like Spotify and Klarna.
Cool. And what's your personal role at Samsung?
So I have a design background myself, so I used to actually do actual client work, but a couple of years ago I stopped doing that and solely focusing on scaling the experience of Samsung and scaling the company and figuring out how to approach new client segments and our offering moving forward.
Yeah, and I know Thomas from way back when I was running my first company. And there you did only design, right, first, and then you ran product for a while. Or do I
Yeah,
remember?
exactly.
Is it
Yeah.
correct?
So I
Yeah.
mean, I think since I have like I view myself more as a sort of creative. I have an agency background, and I like to work on a conceptual level. So I think I very much enjoy thinking about product as a whole, and I think that's also my role now at Samsung is very much along with sales. It's very much like helping clients facilitate that process of thinking about uh, what's the purpose of our product and where do we fit in a larger ecosystem.
Very cool. And now in the world of AI, where do you find yourself?
Yes, I mean, last year was obviously pretty rough for the tech industry. So uh, partly out of necessity, but also out of curiosity, we started thinking about how to leverage AI, and it's new to us as for everyone else, obviously. So we're humble around the fact that there's lots of things to learn. But since tech is in a very tough place right now, I think it's stabilizing a bit, but it's still kind of tough. So we realize we need, from just a strategic standpoint, we need to reduce dependency on these like high burn rate, consumer facing tech startups that are obviously more subjected to risk when recessions hit and when consumer spend decrease. So we have about last spring we felt the need to start to think about AI's place in all of this. So the combination of AI and focusing more on business to business clients, I think, is a huge opportunity for not just us, but like the investment space and the consultancy space as a whole. So right now, just as an example, we're doing a project with AI in collaboration with a private equity firm. So they have an investment in a company that's like a sort of legacy company as a SaaS company in the property management space. And they have a huge opportunity in scaling that product by leveraging AI. And not just by like slapping a AI chat on top of it, but actually thinking about how AI can be implemented in various contact points throughout the whole experience to actually make users' lives much easier and subsequently scaling the product. So AI is to us it's a very interesting, not so much from a design craft perspective, like the all of the like Figma plugins to populate the design with content. To us, that's not like that's an incremental improvement of the life of a designer, but for the industry as a whole, I think it's a huge opportunity to just automate away tedious tasks and be much smarter around like data management. And there are just like a plethora of opportunities in this space, which we are very excited about.
Cool. I mean, and if you look at it like, I don't know, you've obviously kind of read and get inspired a lot. What's because this is kind of a topic that we're onto quite a bit because we feel it's where a lot of the opportunities are for ourselves and for like entrepreneurs in general. It's like, what are the new interfaces that take kind of advantage of these new capabilities with AI, right? And I'll just take an example that I saw like literally today, which is that Google released, I think it's within Android, that you can like draw a circle on any
Yeah.
kind of part of a photo and then like use that as part, either like search for it, right? That's image search, they have it already. But you can also like, ask, okay, how do I play this board game? If it's a picture of a, specific board game. So like that was for me like a very nice kind of, human kind of, okay, what is this? It's like pointing and asking someone, right? But on the phone. But I don't know, just to point it over to you, like what are the coolest kind of things you've seen, or what are the innovations you've seen, like from a design perspective, like as AI has come into our lives?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways to look at this development, and I think depending on where in the value stack you want to focus, I think uh, what I mentioned before, like the business to business space, we will always have, well, not always, obviously, but like for a foreseeable future, I think we will continue to see these pockets of value in business to business cases where it's highly specialized applications of AI, which is very interesting, and we can do a lot of cool things for those companies specifically, or not just us, but like companies can do really cool things. Uh, but I think in parallel, I think if you look at the consumer experience, like where will consumers spend the most time in with AI? I think we are seeing a trend, or at least we believe it, the trend is moving towards a more centralized experience. So I think what Google showed with Gemini and Bard this fall is a good indication of that. So I think we will see the big players like Google and Meta and Apple and OpenAI or Microsoft will start to build these centralized experiences where you can actually go from inspiration to intent to purchase or whatever the end-to-end experience would look like. So I think it's going to be like the you have with Google Search today, which is essentially a search field where you can search, what year was Einstein born, and then they added, you can find flight tickets, and then they added you can do some light top level shopping on top of that. And I think to me the Bar Gemini experience is like the end game, or at least the maybe it's a couple of years away before we see that consumers actually spending time in that type of experience. But I think from a design standpoint, I think that's really exciting because, or at least interesting, because when you have experiences that are like you can search for a recipe and then the experience creates a UI on the fly to fit the content that's presented. Uh, then the need to dip into these specific silos, which today is like apps, web pages, essentially these are silos of information and content to perform very specific tasks, right? So you dip into the Uber app to perform the get me a taxi task. Uh, that need will not no longer be as clear, I think, or the need will be clear, but that solution will not be as obvious. So I think we will see a convergence of behavior and user needs uh, in these like holistic experiences. So maybe you will just go to the whatever that product is called, like the Google experience, and just do everything in there.
Yeah. So what we um, s- briefly touched on this on the last episode, or two episodes back, that a year ago, when GPT-4 was new, we had a thesis that what was going on is that every company is building AI into their apps. But what you're saying now is what we reflected on as well, that um, it's more like the overall the big players are building AI into the frames that hold company specific apps. So
Yeah,
Google is building it into search and into Chrome even, as a browser even, and the Microsoft is building
I,
it
th-
into
I think I mean,
Windows.
it's logical that we are in this current app paradigm
Yeah,
because that's made sense from a historical perspective, and it's always easy to reverse engineer the current paradigm when you have all the facts, obviously. But I think uh, I think the consumer experiences, as always, will be driven around consumer purchases and like consumption in general. So the vast majority of the things that consumers actually do will in the end drive what the big players are spending their money on. And I think
Mm.
the vast majority of the time people are actually doing is like they are watching Snapchat, they are ordering sushi, and they are communicating with friends, and they are like buying sneakers, you know. So it's like these niche cases can also be solved in broader experiences. But I think lots of the innovation and I think the investments will be drawn to purchasing like these like basic cases.
But if we
Yes.
take that like example with Uber, so just to paint it out, let's say I'm using my iPhone or my Android phone, and I'm like, order me a cab, right? I want to go here to there. I don't know. I do it in voice or text or whatever. Um, and then instead of then it using my Uber app to do that, and then you know giving me a link that or whatever, or directing me to that app where I can see the driver coming, because maybe I want to see that. I want to see how far away the driver is. I want to see who it is and his rating, etc., right? So instead of using the apps as is, it would be directly in whatever this
Yes.
new UIs. And why would that be, like, from your perspective as a design? Because like I've been thinking like that as well, but I'm not 100% clear on why it would be better with like a Uber map injected into Chat GPT, so to say, than just directing me to the Uber app
But I mean,
and acting through it.
if you if you look at it from the other way around, like what is the user need to open a specific app to perform a specific task? I mean, just the example you did with like asking Siri to order an Uber, which I already think you can do, and you probably have been able to for a while. Yeah, and I think that's a good example of when you can I think you do that with like DoorDash and those type of apps too. That's a good example of when these apps actually they've invested a lot into the infrastructure of providing these services. I mean, the complex thing with Uber, I assume, is hiring a billion drivers and like managing that whole infrastructure and the infrastructure around route optimization and payments and all of that stuff. The actual top layer, the end user experience, I don't think it makes sense at all to think of that as a contained experience. I think it makes much more sense to view it as potentially as a part of a larger experience where it's like you go from you go from doing that to shopping sneakers and booking a Airbnb place in the same experience, because you're already transitioning in and out of different uh, contexts as a human. So why would you force that into different silos of experiences? So I think we will see a centralization of UX basically, which puts us as designers in a very peculiar situation. Like if these major players start to own these huge experiences, uh, they sort of set the rules for how these experiences and how the content will be presented and all of these things. It's I mean, to me it seems like a very different landscape.
So, what would be your advice to leadership in small and medium businesses today? Should they use AI for internal tools, or should they accelerate innovating in AI, using AI in their product offerings?
I mean, I think it depends a lot on the product and the user type. I think it's like as I mentioned. I think if it's a business company working with a very specific industry and a specific user type, that that value pocket needs a very specific set of solutions. But if you have a product company that is like sell, I don't know, insurance to dog owners, I think I mean, maybe that's a very specific case, but like I think consumer facing products will probably sooner or later have to think about where do they belong in a larger value stack. I think Similarly to what we had, I remember when I worked at Aftonbladet, one of the newspapers in Sweden, a bunch of years ago. Apple and Google started and Facebook started to address the whole like news space. So we had this discussion in the whole media industry, like where do we belong as content creators in the value stack? Is it important for us to own the top level experience, or is our value to create the content? And like inevitably they had to face that the face of sort of losing control of the content, and we had this whole discussion about who pays what to who, and I think we will see a similar discussion with AI. So I mean, if everyone orders Uber rides through a centralized experience, or through whether or not it's voice or chat or whatever, like that's a huge thing potentially for a company like Uber, and they need to
Mm.
think about what that means to them.
No, but I just think it's interesting because if you look at the operating systems, I mean, let's just take, Android and iOS, right? On mobile. Like it's not a huge leap for them to just, I mean, to have front page of like the first screen instead of having app symbols as the main thing, to have a UI, you know, innovation where, the first thing you do is either talk to it um, or write something or maybe take a photo and then say what you like, having an interaction where you use like these basic things like writing, photo, video, and speaking, and then through that the AI, you can instruct the intent of what you want, and the AI can use all these capabilities that are already there in this whole app ecosystem of Uber and DoorDash and whatever, right? All those capabilities are already there. So it could be like a really
Yeah,
quick shift, actually. Like if you just, if
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it will be quicker than people are comfortable with. So I mean, yeah, it's for sure a huge thing. And I think similarly to what companies are doing in more B2B products, where they refine the GPT they train it on their own data to make it more relevant to them. I think we will see a shift where the large players, since they are on top of the data stack, they have all your personal data, they have your purchase history, your subsequently your personal taste. I mean, what kind of music you listen to, health data, all of these things. I mean, they can obviously refine your personal experience to be even more personal and more relevant. So I think they are in a extremely pretty scary position to really make a pretty powerful thing out of this.
yeah,
At the same time, they will need to provide some kind of brand exposure in order for uh, the actual service providers to not reject them as a channel.
Yeah, sure. And I don't think there's a contradiction there. I think you can definitely still have a great experience. I mean, if the Uber map and the time to arrival and the driver's profile is all injected in this experience, I mean, it's not that different from just looking at it in the app, right? I mean, and it's all from Uber.
Mm,
So I don't think it's that different from a user perspective, but it's very different
mm,
from a infrastructure perspective for us for Uber.
yeah. If we get back to talking about what is uh, actually going on right now, rather than what might happen in the future, what's the platform you are currently building for, and where are you advising companies to put their user experiences?
So I mean, to us, I mean, this is very new to us as well. So, and we are not a tech company; we're a design company and a product creative company. So in the private equity case I mentioned, it's a SaaS in the prop management space, and so we will probably think about uh, we will do different specialized agents that do specific tasks, like are really good at reading through a document and or hopefully a large amount of documents and sorting them and extracting data and making it searchable. And then we look at like a chat interface, like a companion, that's not the experience, it's just one of many possibilities. And it's like financial features. I mean, there are so many things we could do, but we at Samsung, we don't build that technical experience. We just make sure it's feasible, and then we use that as like a creative soil to come up with opportunities.
All right. And today, if a company would look at building an internal tool and prototyping this, is is it okay to to build a custom GPT for that and have their employees work through ChatGPT, or should they invest in having proprietary interfaces so they retain ownership?
Yeah, I think this is the $1 million question, but like my gut feeling is that uh, the problem with GPT is that it has sort of forced the whole industry into thinking about AI as LLMs and as chat, which I think is, I mean, sort of makes sense from where we stand, but it's also a pretty arbitrary and crude experience. So for some reason, people expect users to become like prompt engineers and to do all of these things in a chat interface. And to me, it seems like a huge step backwards. It's like, I mean, it's a worn out example, but like the spreadsheet, like here's an empty spreadsheet, figure it out.
Mm.
Like it's, I mean, it's from a user experience standpoint, it makes zero sense to me. So I think, yes, in some cases, if it's purely like, give me the sales data for the Nordics for last quarter, and okay, present this to me in a pie chart instead of a, that probably makes sense. But very few people seem to talk about the opportunities with AI in creating actual like proactive experiences. So it's always pull rather than push for some reason, which I think is a pretty lazy approach.
Yes.
So hey, here's an empty chat field. Figure it out. Pull whatever data you want. And I don't really see what problem we're solving with that. I mean,
Mm.
we already decided that we should present data to users in a nice way, and then we all of a sudden decided that we should just revert back to an empty chat field. So I don't think that makes sense. So to answer your question, I think in some cases, probably yes, at least as a sort of companion on top of a bigger experience. But generally speaking, try to think about it as an opportunity throughout the experience and be much more proactive.
So how could a proactive AI agent work?
Uh, so again, depends on the if it's like a consumer case or a business case. But in a business case, I think there are plenty of opportunities in like if you let's say you manage a property and the AI says, okay, good morning. Seems like we have an issue here with heavy weather coming in. Maybe you should, consider these actions today before it's too late, because otherwise you will end up with a whole mess tomorrow with these things. Or, I mean, there are like, and those experiences, I think, fundamentally drive huge business value because it creates stickiness in the experience and it creates value. It also, of course, increases risk because if you make the wrong assumptions, you're sort of screwed. But I think that to me is a proactive experience. In contrast to that, I think the broad consumer case, what we talked about earlier with the Google experience or like the one entry point experience, I think you could do a bunch of stuff with just instead of me asking the product or the AI to like give me recipes for the pasta carbonara, it should just like figure out that I'm probably in the mood for a pasta carbonara because of all of these data points that it already gathered. It knows how much I slept. It knows how much like what my heart rate is. I mean, all of these things. Or like, what type of sneakers do I want? It already knew I needed a couple of sneakers, and it knew what type of brand and my shoe size and when I need them or where I want them. So I mean, to me, it seems like we already have all of the data to do all of these things.
And it's interesting, just but if we take that, and this is obviously like a billion trillion dollar question, right? But if we just look at chat as like the primary chat and voice as the primary reactive interface of AI so far, right? Where it's not proactive, it's reactive, right? And we have this free form open thing because you can ask it anything. And then people package it in different ways. And custom GPTs is a way to sort of use the same interface but target kind of the capabilities and what you get out of it a bit more. But if you just think about it like as in what direction would you look when you're exploring like a general purpose proactive interface? So if you think along like just in the UI, because what you just said, I could put that in my head if I want to into the chat interface. It's just a chat, but instead of waiting for me to ask something, it says, "Hey, by the way, do you want me to order pasta carbonara for you today? Or are your sneakers getting old? Here are the same ones you bought like last time. You want them?" Right? I could put that there. But if from your perspective, like, do you like if you just like approach this from first principles, like when we make the shift from reactive to proactive, what do you think needs to change, should change, has the opportunity to change in like the interface and the UI, the UX of it?
I mean, I think if we look past the app paradigm and we think of it as a first of all more centralized experience, I think screens still make sense. I think voice. I mean, people are many companies are still sort of hoping for voice to take off as an interface, but I still find it pretty awkward, and I can just anecdotally confirm this by living my life that people are not that comfortable using voice as an interface. You don't sit in the subway and ask your Siri for the pasta carbonara recipe, right? I mean, no one does that. So I think voice is overrated outside of a very at home private setting. So I think it's going to be like a more of a sort of companion approach that follows you through life. And I think it's a screen interface, it's a visual interface, but it's probably more of a like a tiled tiled action list or something that's like dynamic. I could definitely see that type of experience completely replacing the app paradigm.
Could you talk a bit more about that? A tiled action list. What do you mean by that?
So like this is just I mean, my guess is just as good as
Yes.
anyone else's, obviously, but like I could definitely think of it as like a list of widgets that are like dynamically like they customize to whatever it guess my intent is throughout the day or throughout the week or whatever. So it could have like a mix of different time perspectives, but I think most people are interested in what's happening right now. So I'm heading out from work, I'm going to the subway, and it gives me like a list of possible actions for the remainder of the day or something.
It's like in my phone when I pull down on this from the top of the screen to search for an app, it shows me 8 app icons, which I'm pretty sure is actually contextually like estimating
Yes.
where where they um, yeah, how they fit into my current situation.
Yeah.
What are some real world learnings that you've made so far? Is there something you can to round off this episode? Is there something we can um, share with the listeners?
Yeah. So I think from a design perspective, I think it's not necessarily that different. I think if you're a experienced product designer and you understand the how to approach a complex user problem and break that down and execute on it, I think it's not that different. What AI does is that it unlocks a new set of features and possibilities. So I don't think it's that different. I think, however, that what is different is that it's easy to come up with cool concepts, but it's hard to assess how complex they are to actually make reality of.
And, and that's really mirrored in current state of the industry, where we see 1,000 really cool demos for every real world product that is coming out with actual AI features.
Yeah, and then like with the Bard Gemini demo, it turns out it's like pretty fake. So
Yes.
I mean, yeah. So and I think, but it still gives you a hint of what's coming, and I think that's interesting. But I think for now, I think my recommendation is probably for companies to try to keep it simple and to be creative, like truly creative. Try to be more intuitive and think out of the LLM box, because I think that's a very it's a good starting point, but I think it's just one of many paradigms to come. And I think when we start training these models on like video and more data rich data sets, I think we will see much cooler things happening.
Awesome. Do you have any closing thoughts we can round off with?
I mean, I'm just very grateful that we get to experience this shift. I think it's if not a once in a lifetime opportunity, it's at least a once in a decade opportunity. I think we are just getting started.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you, Rasmus, and our listener for being with us through the episode. And we are going to talk a lot more about AI and UX, UI in the future as well, with more guests coming in on that topic and others. And so, thank you so much, Thomas, and have a really nice rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.